The Travel Transformation Podcast is proud to be partnered with Give the Goodness Global, an amazing global outreach project helping families in need all over Southeast Asia and beyond. Please check them out at Instagram.com/Give the Goodness Global today. And now on to the podcast episode.
Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, the podcast that explores the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply want to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, travel transformation coach, founder of the Travel Transformation Company, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, the podcast where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. Today I have a special guest with me in person, and she's the only person to ever come back twice as a guest so far. If you want to listen to her initial interview and story, you can find it at number 8 on the podcast. But today's guest is Deanna Lowe. Hello, Deanna.
Hello, Jess. Thanks for inviting me back, and I'm so glad that we're finally in person.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's nice to do this when it's not over Zoom.
Yes.
So I think we should set the stage for the people listening, because we're currently in a co-living together in the Basque Country in Spain, and we're currently recording from an epic room, which is the chapel, which is amazing. It's got like stained glass windows, it's got books everywhere. For some reason it has pink wallpaper, but I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like the Zoom room. So this is what you book when you come to have calls and stuff like that. So I thought we'd record it in here. And we're just going to have a casual chat about travel and also about wine, because that is your passion. And we thought, because we're talking about wine, we're going to start drinking some wine. So,
of course.
And then you arrived and you had this amazing fancy ass bottle that you'd got from duty free. So we're going to pour that in a moment. Can you tell us a bit about this wine? Because I'm really excited to try it.
So this is the Dolce Gabbana. It's a partnership with the winery Donna Fugata. It's a Sicilian rosé from the appellation Sicilia DOC. I personally never tried a Sicilian rosé until this one, and I'm a bougie girl. I love luxury, so I was in duty free in Rome before I got here to the Basque Country, and I just saw the bottle, and it just clicked with me. I was just like, yeah, this is worth just getting just for the fanciness. I didn't quite know if I was buying it for the packaging or the label, or if I was buying it for the wine, but I was like, might as well just take this opportunity to try it and kind of splurge a bit on myself. And
you got to treat yourself sometimes.
Yeah, treat yourself, exactly.
And I totally relate with the label. It's so pretty. I think I would have got it for the label alone.
Yeah.
And I've taken some pictures, and I'm going to put some on social media as well. So check that out at the Travel Transformation Coach. No, it's at Travel Transformation Coach. No, there. On Instagram. We haven't even started drinking it, honestly. And you'll be able to see the pretty label.
Yes. So, shall we drink?
Yes, let's pour this.
Okay.
Nice.
I love Italian wines, and I'm just so glad we can drink together. It's a nice, aperitivo.
Yes, we're currently waiting for our dinner. So
yes, exactly. This is a pre-dinner.
Yes.
Cheers.
Oh, that's nice.
Lovely.
It's very light. I pretend I know what I'm talking about with wine, but it's very, very light, I think. Smooth.
Yeah, this is a nice, just a nice spring, summer wine, I'd say. If you're, chilling on a patio, you want something soak up the sun and just enjoy nature. I think rosés are one of the best. It's very casual. It is also a people-pleasing wine if you have a bunch of friends that don't know a lot about wine, or maybe just want a fun wine to have. Rosés are very pleasant on the palate. They're not too strong. They're not too overbearing to somebody who's not used to drinking wines. So it's just light, it's friendly, inviting, and yeah.
I totally agree. Rosé is my favorite type of wine, and it's definitely a summer drink. Like, it's either that or cider, but like if I'm on the wine and it's summer and you're outside in the sun and you're with your friends, it's just like rosé time, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like rosé's my go-to if I was to pick something that I want to bring to a party. Yeah. And this one, obviously the bottle is so cool. Like I love the label. So basically some background on this, I was just researching it because I wasn't quite sure what this wine was about, and I'm new to Sicilian rosé. Basically, it comes from, this is a blend from black grapes, Nerello, Mescalis, and Nocuro, which probably most people on this podcast have not even heard of. They're like, I've only just learned about this today, basically. But they're mostly... they're obviously Sicilian grapes. Nocuro is actually an ancient variety, which Donna Fugata, the winery, they experimented with, and it helps to keep that high level of acidity while bringing in all those very like fruit-forward notes there. So basically, this is a 2020 vintage. Fermentation-wise, sits in the skins for 6 to 12 hours. So when wine is basically, the color of the juice is always white. When it sits in the skin, that's when it gets its color. So if it's a rosé, it won't sit in the skin for as long as a Cabernet Sauvignon, let's say. So this was only like 6 to 12 hours in the skins. It was fermented for around 2 months in stainless steel tanks and over 3 months in the bottle. So very light, like very fast fermentation process, and doesn't have a lot of complexity in the flavor, which is not a bad thing, by the way. Complexity, like everyone is different. There are so many wines out there. Some people like more complex wines. Some people like more lighter, less complex wines. It's all up to your palate. Your palate decides which wine is good. So that's my philosophy there. And what are you tasting right now? I want to ask you.
I knew you were going to ask me this. Because I always, when we go out drinking, I'm always like swirling the glass, swirling the glass. Already.
Swirling the glass.
And I'm always like, I have hints of grape and notes of alcohol. Like, that's my level of wine tasting. So, okay, let me try.
What are you smelling?
I don't know, it's just very light and floral. And
florals, yeah.
It's like slightly fruity, but not like overbearingly.
I would say what I first think of is citrus. When I first smell this, it has lots of like lemony flavors too.
You can tell you're a lot more used to this because I'm like, citrus, right?
That's okay. It's all practice. Like, say like peaches. You can say like a light fragrance of strawberry.
I might get the peach actually.
Yes.
So when you taste a wine, do you get the same like information as when you smell it, or is it different sometimes? Like, do you change your mind once you've tasted it?
Sometimes you do change your mind. Like sometimes you smell something and when you taste it, it's different. And that's all about the experience. Is like, it's a sensory experience, right? Tasting is sight, smell, taste. So yeah, it's normal to be doing the same things. It doesn't have to always be the same. Sometimes it does go hand in hand. Sometimes it doesn't. And that's part of the experience of like exploring. I would say that I do taste some like orange blossom in there, some floralness. Like the floral notes really, I find I taste it more than when I smell. I do smell a bit like of the orange blossom. I think the citrus wise, the lemon kind of sticks out. But to be fair, majority of people say they smell lemon. Like lemon is the initial thing that most people would smell.
See, I'm not sure now if it's just because you put it in my head. And now I'm thinking, oh yeah, orange blossom.
That's why I asked you, because it's interesting what different people might be smelling and tasting. And when you can do it in a group, it's actually interesting what other people might catch that you won't catch, because
that's true.
It's really about familiarity from your experiences. So let's say you eat a lot of strawberries, you'll be able to probably spot that easier than if this had orange blossom notes, but you don't eat a lot of oranges, you're not around it, then you're not going to notice it as quickly. So it's all about familiarity. It's all about, for myself, I like to make correlations, like to memories with different types of notes, because that's how I remember, because it's so hard to remember, oh, this tastes like this smells like this. Like, how are you supposed to spot it? Well, you spot it through practice, and you spot it through your own interpretation of what that is. So it's all like an art form almost. Wine is like art. And what they like to say is that wine is also like a moment in time stored in a bottle, because these grapes were harvested 2020 and we're just only drinking it now, 2023. So it's like, okay, it's got time in the bottle and stuff. So that whole collection of that, when the grapes are growing through the winemaking process, all those points are compiled into the bottle, stored into the bottle.
That's I really like that. I like the wine, like a moment in time. Yes. Stored. That's a really cool way of looking at it. And like you say, like people pick out different things. Like when I went to wine tasting in Stellenbosch in South Africa, we like went around the table and said, what do you find in this? And everyone said something different. And some of them were right and some of them were wrong. But like, one of them was like, oh no, I swear there's like orange in this. And the guy was like, there isn't. And there's like, maybe it's just like what you associate it with, what you're used to, that kind of thing. So yeah, I totally get that.
And it's also like dependent on what you had before this. So if you were like eating a salad beforehand, sometimes you might smell like those aspects of from your salad in your wine. It might not necessarily be there, but it's influencing your senses. So with wine tasting, it's really important to almost like, how would I say it? Keep your senses a bit more clear. So when we do wine tastings, we try to have like not so flavorful foods. So like just something like crackers to eat on the side. We have water to cleanse out our palate, but it's really to get that fresh take rather than having things influenced from our environment or from what we were having before.
That's an interesting point. Not really thought about it like that.
Yes.
Okay, so before we go any further, before I drink too much wine, I totally forget, we should tell the listeners about your Wineisseur blog and your podcast. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit in case I forget at the end?
Yeah, for sure. So Wineisseur, like I started it basically because I saw a need for education on wine in North America. I'm from Canada, Vancouver. So in North America, from what I've seen, there's like a big gap in knowledge between people who don't know a lot and people who know a ton about wine. And from my, I guess, observations and talking to customers and stuff through my jobs, I kind of figured, for one thing, wine can be a very pretentious subject because if you don't know a lot, there can be a bit of snobbery around not knowing a lot. So like, you might be asking questions about fermentation. The person that knows a lot is like scoffing at you. They're like, oh, like this person doesn't know a lot. It is a real like ego thing with the industry and with knowing about wine. But what I try to do through my blog is giving that based education for those people that don't know a lot and making it an inclusive space to just allow them to gain that knowledge and explore more of the wine world, because it should be really inviting. Wine is for everyone. I don't think that you have to know a lot for wine to be for you, because how do you know that much? You know it from learning it from somewhere. And for myself, all my knowledge was through work from the professions I was in. So it was not from family members. I never learned anything from them about wine because they don't drink wine. So it's to say that there's so many types of wines out there. There's a wine for everyone. Somebody tells me they don't like wine, and I tell them you haven't tried enough, because there are so many types. Like there's no way that you can't find one that you actually, your palate likes. And also I think that we have to push ego aside from that, because wine is a very knowledge-based skill. So that's when people feel like, if I don't know a lot, that I shouldn't delve into it, because then I'm going to look like an idiot if I ask these questions. And for myself, well, I didn't know anything about wine until I was like, I didn't know a lot till I started working at like a liquor store, which is probably 21. Mm-hmm. So yeah, before I might have said, smelled and been like, I smell lemons, like I don't know what I'm really doing. That's okay to say. What's important is that at those beginning stages that you have someone to show you the ropes and someone inviting to the space, and not to not make knowledge a competition, because there's so much to know in the wine world. There's immense amounts that nobody knows everything, and nobody can admit to knowing everything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, having humility there and being humble, and yeah,
I totally agree with that. I think it's an age thing as well. Like a lot of the wine experts are older. They might seem a bit unapproachable, or like, you know, like they seem too far up, too posh, too whatever it is that makes you think like, oh, I don't relate to this person. Whereas like someone like you, a lot younger, who is talking about wine, saying it should be inclusive and there's a wine for everyone and stuff. I think that's really important, because that will get more people into it, and will feel less like an idiot asking questions. Like, I mean, that happens in a lot of things, but especially I would imagine the wine industry, like you say, that's what I feel like. I feel like I don't really know anything. And like when there's a sort of rich old person talking about it or something, it can be a bit like, oh, I don't know if I could.
Oh, totally.
Know as much as them. Yeah.
I mean, I was a sommelier at Mission Hill, and a lot of people would look at me and be like, she's a sommelier, she's so young, right? They would think it's like some 45-year-old man, or like, and to be fair, it's just a title. Sommelier is a title, it means wine expert. Was it an expert then? I don't really know. It depends how you would rate an expert. You would rate me as an expert. Somebody would listen to my level of skill and be like, I'm an expert, you're not an expert. And that's okay. And I think I was very much, there was times where I was maybe a bit laughed at for my age. And it's like, oh, you don't know like stuff. I have wines like the same age as you, or older. And it's just like, it's not a competition. That's the thing. Like, of course you know more than me. You're like 50 years old. You've been a wine club member for so long. You know Mission Hill wines more than me. And that's okay to say, because I was part of a cohort. We were all new workers and we're all being trained. That's like, you go into the job and you learn. That's hands-on learning. That's like, so I don't feel like anyone should be judged for how much they know, because everyone starts somewhere. And I think if people feel comfortable enough, we can get more people to learn about wine. We can get more people comfortable to be tasting wines, to be experimenting, and to really delve into this niche space, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about the expert thing, there's like this thing called the 10% edge that makes me feel a lot better about stuff. It's like, to be an expert to someone else, you only have to have a 10% edge over them. You need to be the next step up. You just need to know a little bit more about them, and to them, that's really useful. They can learn from you. You don't have to be like the best person in the world or the person who knows absolutely everything to be able to teach other people about it. You just have to have that like 10% more knowledge, or, and I think that's really like interesting, and it sort of gives you permission to call yourself an expert, which some people have like issues with no matter what their industry. So so you said about being trained.
Yes.
How does that work? Because I'm just imagining like a load of people at a wine tasting trying to learn but like getting drunk, or like, how does that work? How do you learn about wines? And do you do wine tastings as like a team, or like, how does that happen?
So I think being a sommelier in Mission Hill is called the Wine Career Development Program at the Mark Anthony Group. So anyone who, is in Canada or wants to work in wine and is able to work in Canada, I would invite you to apply to that role if you want to learn more about wine, because I think it was a great way to immerse yourself. First off, with being a sommelier, you had a lot of accessibility to wines. And in Canada, a good bottle of wine is, I would say, at least $25. Here, I mean, depends on your palate. I could say like 5-10 euros is actually not bad, right? So I think being in the industry gives you a lot more accessibility to trying different wines, because trying a lot of wines is expensive, first off. So for myself, when I was a sommelier, I got to taste a lot of different wines. On Fridays, we had our meeting. We did blind taste tests. And by the way, when you're tasting, part of tasting is spitting.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds a bit weird, but in wine world, it's posh. It is very appropriate.
Unnecessary, I'm guessing.
Well, it's very necessary to spit or else people get drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, the learning gets blurry.
Yeah.
So to not get drunk, you spit, and that's the way to do it. It sounds a bit like waste, but I've been at wine events where I get really drunk. But I can admit that. Spitting is really crucial to ensuring that you learn and having a functionable brain, I would say. Also, being in the industry, I had people around me who are learning and who I could learn from. Mm-hmm. So being in a community where you can bounce off ideas and share your learnings is really important, because the only way you can learn is through sharing with somebody else. Good to be able to open up to people who know more than you, and for people who know less than you, and being able to educate each other and be able to provide your knowledge. Because what they say is that when people listen, they're learning. When people are speaking, they're just repeating what somebody else told them.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that from one of my colleagues there. And that was actually a really interesting thing that he said, because it just reminded me of how much more we need to be listening rather than speaking. We always think about, even when someone's talking, we're thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to say,
Mm-hmm.
But if you're straight just listening, you're just soaking in what they're saying like a sponge, then you're just that's when the actual learning comes from. And when there's enough humility to be I don't know this, but I'm going to listen to that person that's teaching me, that's where true growth comes.
Yeah, and that's very appropriate now, because we're in a co-living that focuses on self-development and personal growth and workshops and skill shares and all that good stuff. So that kind of ties in nicely. So two of your passions are wine and travel, and you've obviously combined them a lot, over the past year, this year and last year as well, you're in Europe. So could you tell us some of the wine regions you visited, and maybe your favorite parts or your favorite wine that you've had while on the road?
Sorry for the interruption, but I just have to tell you about Give the Goodness Global, an incredible global outreach project run by American veteran Cody Grannon. Cody is passionate about helping those in need all over the world, whether it's raising money for a specific family he's met while traveling in Southeast Asia, giving food and supplies to people who would otherwise go without, or simply donating his time to help wherever help is needed. Please check out Instagram.com/GiveTheGoodnessGlobal to find out more, to donate money to their current cause, or to buy Give the Goodness Global merch, all the profits of which go straight back to helping those in need. Plus, 10% of all profits from Jessica Grace Coleman's book, Intentional Travel Transformation, are donated to this brilliant cause. You can find out more about this at traveltransformationcoach.com/books. So remember, be kind and give the goodness always. Thank you. And now back to the Travel Transformation Podcast.
So I did the solo trip around Europe. That's where we met. Mm-hmm. And I got a chance to visit Porto, which is in Portugal. It's where the Douro River is. And I learned a lot about port there. I actually wrote a blog about how it changed my perspective on port, because port is fortified. Fortified wine can be very out there because it has high alcohol and high sugar level, which a lot of people, for me, sometimes when I drink a fortified wine, I cringe. Dolce gives me the vermouth wine, and I'm just oh my God, this is medicine, right? So it's really at you in the face. And then, so port, I was okay, I kind of went into Porto. I visited after Lisbon, and I was kind of I tried to go there with an open mind. I was hey, let's see how port is. And I visited a couple of different port houses, Callum, Burmester. So what's really cool about port wine is that in Porto, you can go to multiple port houses just in the city. So you don't have to like a lot of wine experiences. You have to maybe travel out maybe half an hour, even more away from the city to get to the actual wine region and to be able to do those tastings. Whereas in Porto, what's really valuable is that the pour houses are right in the city. So there's like the river, there's a city, and then there's Villanova de Gaia, which I was staying. And luckily, all I did was walk down the hill. There's like a whole row of port houses, which is so cool. And I got to see like, I think it was 25 port houses, which is massive, just along that strip. So I did some port tastings. I went to the WOW Museum, so the World of Wine Museum. So they have different exhibits. I checked out the wine exhibit, of course, and I checked out the cork exhibit. And then I learned that Portugal has a very big cork industry. They're the biggest producer of cork in the world. So like those cork tops, what I mean. So those primarily come from Portugal, from the tree, and they kind of break it down. And it's interesting how this thing is so light, but it can be used for so many different things, not just a cork in a wine bottle, so many different things. So it was really interesting to learn that. And then through the port, I drank quite a bit of port, and I learned a lot. I can say the grape varieties are completely different than what the traditional ones are, like Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc. Like those are traditional. Port grapes are completely different. They all have different names. But I think that the types, it actually, learning about them gave me a greater appreciation for it, because I realized like this is one of the oldest appellations in the world. And the story behind port is that the reason why it's fortified is because Portugal, their outlet was the Douro River into the ocean. That's how they would bring boats full of wine and then trade it, use it for, allow other places to purchase. And of course, the problem is that when they would be going to very far off places, so Macau and China, or some people might call it separate, but it is in the Chinese region, is Portuguese colony. So when they would go all the way, so they go like basically around Africa, all the way past India up to Macau, it would turn to vinegar, their regular wine. So what they discovered was that by adding more alcohol and sugar, it was able to preserve the wine by the time it got up there. And that's how port was born, which was so fascinating to me. Yeah, because I was like, I tried port at first and I was like, what the heck? It's like so strong. It's so like, strong.
Why would someone do that?
Yeah, exactly, right? And then I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. And like, alcohol is a natural preservative. Sugar is a natural preservative. Yes. My words are jumbling everywhere. So they're natural preservatives, and that's what helps to be able to ship those wines to those places, because it's bad for business if they're to give bottles of wine and they end up being vinegar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I did not know that. I'm learning things.
Yay!
It's like wine lessons in the chapel.
Wine lessons in the chapel. Yeah. And at co-living, because co-living is all about growth mindset and learning. Yeah. Second place I went to was Champagne. Obviously, I love Champagne. I guess I'm a bit of a snob, but like
she says while drinking Dolce Gabbana.
Yeah, bit of a snob, but I love Champagne. Champagne, I don't know, it's expensive. It's so exclusive. I love it so much.
So glamorous.
Yeah, I love, when we savored, you saw me savor the bottle savored a wine for the first time last year with Jess and a couple of friends in Totnes, Devon. And it was with a champagne wine bottle that I bought from Champagne. So I was waiting for that perfect moment to savor it. I've never savored a bottle before, but I wanted to do it with a wine glass because I don't have a savor knife with me. And I did it with a small bottle first, just, because I did not want to waste a bottle of wine by accidentally, dropping it or something like that. So I was able to do that, which was so much fun. And yeah, Champagne, bougie girl here. Like it just makes sense. I actually learned a lot about Champagne. I can talk about the teachings for a long time, or we can continue if you like.
No, I mean, are there any like fun facts about Champagne, or like what makes it different? to, obviously it's the region, right, that makes
Yes.
some sparkling wines. What makes it so expensive and bougie? Like, why is it so high-end?
Golden question. I was in 2019 was the first time I went to Europe, and I was doing a university exchange, decided to take this wine and spirits course in Bordeaux. Bordeaux is like the hub of wine, as some people may call it, and no expectations for it. I was just like, you know what? I just want to go abroad, to be honest. And I was like, hey, this course like is not provided at my university, so this is an opportunity to take it. And the professor, I lucked out on the professor so much, because the professor makes huge difference in your learning. She was so passionate. She was so French, loved her vibes. And she taught us all about champagne and why it's so expensive. Like, where does that value come from? And she taught us that champagne, first off, has a large history. It's one or the oldest appellation. I would say one of the oldest. I don't know if it's the oldest. I have to fact check that. So basically, it's run by, they have the makers, which are the farmers and stuff. And then they have the merchants who sell the wine. So these are the big brands. So where they've made a lot of their value is a lot of the champagne brands are held under one company, LVMH. So Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, if you don't know what that is. And that's the biggest luxury brand in the world, or a conglomerate, I would say. And they own all these champagne brands. So if you basically, all your champagne brands are in competition with themselves, so they can increase the price to how much. However, because there's a lot of family-run champagnes, but they don't have the ability to distribute it to places like Canada. So in Canada, all I find are big brands. Moet Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, Mumm, Runiert. So all those big brands, and that's how they can jack up the price, essentially, is that they buy the grapes, or they buy like the wine from the supplier, they bottle it and they brand it for their own. And all those brands are held under one company, or mostly under one company. Wow. And that's how they're able to increase the price. Another thing so it's just that the way the business of it works is how they're able to do it. I bought a family run Blanc de Blanc, which at home would be quite expensive, like over $100. I bought it for like 28 euros, and I was like shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, like it doesn't have to be that so expensive. It's champagne. Why is it like the base price of champagne in Canada for a 750 milliliter bottle, $70?
Oof.
Right? So then it's like, oh my gosh, like I feel like we're getting ripped off. Yeah. Right? But it's just the way the business works. And
so how often do you drink champagne at home then, if you're such a fan, but it's so expensive? Do you like wait until you come to Europe and then go crazy, or do you just like go, screw it, I'm going to treat myself, it's my favorite?
It's a treat myself wine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I purchase it a lot. That's what kind of makes it special, is the fact that I can't purchase it a lot.
That's true.
It's a treat, right? Another thing about champagne is the fact that they have non-vintages. So they've been able to build consistency in their brand through producing non-vintage wines. So non-vintage means that the grapes doesn't have to come from a specific year. And that way they've been able to be consistent. So the issue, if you compare this to a place like Bordeaux is very much like they don't have non-vintage wines. They just have vintage, which means that every year their wine changes. Because like I said, wine is like a point in time stored in a bottle. So that year was shit. But that would be stored in the bottle. Not to say it would be a bad wine, but basically like whatever happened that year, if there was like a lot of rain, a lot of sunshine, maybe a drought, it would be in the wine bottle. Whereas champagne, they've been able to get their edge by producing non-vintage. So they're not succumb to that rule of like, these grapes are grown at a certain year. Now they do have vintage champagnes. Vintage champagnes tend to be more expensive. And vintage champagnes are made when it's a good year. But non-vintage champagnes have enabled them to be consistent with their wine. So people aren't guessing like, is this a good year? Is this a bad year? They're just like, champagne's always the same. Mm-hmm. And from a branding perspective, that's very clever because, for example, if your products are not consistent, people don't know what to expect anymore, right? Mm-hmm. If your product is consistent every time, it tastes the same, quality, etc., then people know what to expect. And then it builds that trust. Yeah. That's how champagne's such a powerful wine appellation and a powerful force. And they also have strong laws, which also help. They literally double check that people in other countries are not calling their champagne. Champagne only comes from the region of Champagne in France. Mm-hmm. So if you have a sparkling wine made in the traditional method, it's not champagne unless it's made in Champagne. Mm-hmm. So they really enforce those laws. And even people make champagne color, all this other stuff. They try to reduce or block that out as much as possible because they want to maintain the brand image across the world. Mm-hmm. That's how champagne has become such a powerful appellation.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know any of this. And it makes sense. You say the building trust thing, if you know what you're going to get and you know it's high end and you know it's what you like, you will pay more for it. Whereas if it's, a wine you're not sure what it's like, you're not sure about the year, then it might not be exactly what you want or what you expect. And that's an interesting point. When we were talking about champagne and the sabering, it made me think of Emily in Paris, where the guy, where her friend's family owns is it in Champagne? I can't remember.
Yeah. So Emily's friend, what's her name? Camille. Her dad owns a vineyard in Champagne.
Yes, and they go there and he does the sabering of the bottle, doesn't he? And they try and do it again. Well, she's filming it for her socials or something, gets him to do it again, and then just slices off his finger. I was like, I'm glad I watched that after I saw you try to saber it, because that would have been in my head. Even though you didn't do it with a saber, it would have been oh.
Why does it okay, my friend also said that to me. She's like, yeah, I saw that, and that reminded me of you. And I was like, thanks. So you just think I'm just going to slice off my finger when I saber champagne?
You're the only person I've ever met who's sabered a champagne bottle in front of me. That's the only reason why I don't think you would actually do it.
To be fair, I safely did it with a wine glass.
Yes, and I didn't know you could do it with a wine glass either. That was very cool.
So basically, champagne has enough carbonation in it that you don't need a lot of force. Mm. So the tradition of sabering comes from Napoleon, because Napoleon, when he won a battle, maybe when he lost a battle, he would have his bottle of champagne, and the easiest way to open it was through his sword. That's how it became a thing. But of course, I don't carry a knife around.
Especially when traveling.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work in my carry-on. So, you can saber with anything. You can saber with a wine glass, butter knife, spoon, whatever.
Spoon. Okay.
So actually, I've seen some people, they didn't saber, but they opened a wine bottle with heat.
Oh.
So I've seen that too. That's really cool.
With a lighter or?
Not with a lighter. Somebody, could have been with a lighter. Somebody had a heat, one of those heat, maybe they heated up some it wasn't tongs or something else. They put it around the bottle and then it just the cork came out.
Interesting.
Through heat, which was pretty interesting too.
Nice. It also made me think of, have you watched Schitt's Creek? They have champagne there, but it's that no one has any money there, so it's not from Champagne, and they call it champagne. It's a running joke. Everyone got the champagne.
Where did the J come from? Is it J? Yeah.
I don't know. But it's a J. So it could be a Z. I don't know. But
that's actually hilarious.
Yeah, it makes me think of that. That's funny. Okay. So we met in Javier last year, and you did a wine tasting there as a Skillshare, which was, I think, everyone's favourite Skillshare.
Drunk and learn.
Yes, and you're doing it again this Friday for everyone in the villa, which is very exciting. It'll be our last night in the villa, so it's sad, but I think it's a good way to go out.
I'm going to call it the Last Supper.
We'll have to do a picture around the table.
Oh my god, I totally saw that. I was just have Fernando as Jesus. And then the rest of us just like, I don't know, we'd just be chatting. Some people would be like hobble drunk, like who knows? It'd just be hilarious doing like the Last Suppers type.
That would be amazing. Fernando is our host here, so that works. That would be very funny. We're gonna have to tell him that. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So I guess my question is, if someone's listening to this and they like want to do their own wine tasting at home, they have like a group of friends, and they want to get like some food and do some wine tasting, make it fun. Like, what could they do? Like, so what did we do in Javier? We all picked one wine each, right? And we like researched it. And then you sort of taught us a bit about that. But I guess you could do that online. You could find out like how to do the notes, how to do the legs, all the stuff you showed me. Mm-hmm. Like, what would you suggest if someone wanted to do like a wine tasting with their friends and make it fun? I mean, it'd be fun anyway because it's wine.
Fun. I would say variety matters. So we've already got a white, a rosé, a red. My friend, she wants a dessert wine. So having variety really allows your palate to explore all the different notes and flavors wine has to offer. Basically, variety matters in wine tasting. I think that the more that you, or good amount, not like too many wines, but the more you have, the more you can practice. So for people that feel like I like to practice, like, and the more I have, the more I can be able to, you kind of start learning after so long. Like at the beginning, you might be like, somebody's like, oh, like this has strawberry, this has watermelon. You're kind of like tasting it. You're like, oh, I don't know if I have it. If it has it. But then after, a couple of wines and you start figuring out, like making that correlation in your mind of what it tastes like, and you're like, or what it smells like, then you're like, oh, that's what I'm smelling. So it's kind of like a trained thing. It doesn't come naturally. I can tell you that. It's just, I can say some people have better senses than others. They do say that women have a better sense of smell. And that's because we're built to reproduce, which means that we have to sense danger. That's through scent. So we actually have a better sense of smell than guys. Fun fact. I don't know, but I definitely don't have a better sense of smell than a sommelier guy, but this is a general statement. So yeah, and I think with wine tasting, again, like being open to questions, having someone facilitate it, I think is really important, because if you're there just tasting wine, I don't know what I'm doing, you're not learning, right? So part of it is learning. So having someone facilitate, looking up the wines beforehand and being like, okay, this is from this region, blah, blah, blah. They can speak to it. That's where you hear the story, because there's a story behind how this wine was created. So that's where the learning comes from. So having facilitators is really important. And just, again, like humility, like being humble, not judging people for their amount of knowledge, just being like, hey, any question, throw it out. We'll make it a lot of fun and make it very inviting for people. And I like to see, like, when I talk to people about wine, I like to see that growth in knowledge. Because when their knowledge is growing, that means I'm doing something right. That means I'm sharing something good. Or if vice versa, if I'm growing a lot, my knowledge, that means, I'm doing something right. That it's all about learning. There's so many wines out there. There's so many wines to taste. And to be fair, you don't know what wines you like till you taste it. Yeah. So that's
very true. And for like, if you're putting on a wine tasting for your friends, would you have a spittoon?
Yes.
A spit bucket? How do you deal with that?
Spittoon, so you can have each person have like, I would preface a opaque like cup so people can just spit into it. If you have a spit bucket, it makes it a bit more embarrassing. Yeah. Like people are like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to spit and gob and people are going to see me? Or like, so spit buckets aren't that inviting to spit in because of that. And you see other people spit. It's just like, ugh. There are like actual spittoons, like spit buckets that are covered. So they have like a thing that where like it takes in the wine. and it doesn't show it. It has like a cover over it, which is really nice to have. But you don't need anything fancy. You just need like a cup, spin in it. It's fine.
So do you spit out every bit of wine you taste, or do you like swallow a bit and then spit out the rest?
So you're asking me about spitting technique?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, are you literally meant to spit out everything, or can you like enjoy some of the wine normally and like you still won't get too drunk?
To each their own.
Yeah.
To each their own. If you want to drink it, go drink it.
Yeah.
If you want to spit it, go spit it. But like, it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some people are like, I can drink wine all day. Go for it. Go drink it instead of spitting. Some people prefer to spit because they're like, hey, like if I don't spit, I'm gonna get too drunk. That's okay too. Right?
And like we'll be leaving the house the next day and having to travel and stuff. Yeah, I don't want to get too drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, before we go, I think maybe we could just talk a bit about the co-living space here and like our favourite bits about it, what we've been doing, just to give a bit of context. So I was here last year and I went to Javier, which is where I met you. So we've both been to both sort of Sun & Co places, and they're both in very different places. The Basque Country weather and climate and stuff in particular is very different. And like sometimes you kind of think, am I even in Spain? Like it's that kind of place, but it's beautiful. And it's a huge house, huge villa. So I want to know what your impressions were when you came here, and the area, the house. Obviously you've been to Sun & Co before, so it's a very similar format with the skill shares and stuff like that. But yeah, what did you think of the place when you came?
It's very relaxing. It's like a relaxing retreat. We're in the countryside. There's like, I don't know, what is there to do? Like a cheesecake. There's a cheesecake place. I don't even know. There's
an international bird airport. The cheesecake place is a bar, and there are 2 other bars.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's 2 bars, but like overall, it kind of lets you kind of slow down time and just sort of relax. And I really like it. Like we got the pool, which is amazing. We got a lot of trails in the area to just experience nature and stuff. And I'm in the quad room, so can be quite busy and socially draining in the quad room. Yeah. Because you're sleeping with 3 other people in the same room. I think the best part is not having bunks.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, bunks, like, if you're on the top bunk, you're like, I'm on the top bunk, I have to climb up the stairs every time I want to go to bed. And if I need to go to the washroom, I have to climb down the stairs.
Yeah. I hate the top bunk. I hate it. And like bunk beds are always so tiny. And,
they feel confined again. Yeah, they feel confined. Like, I think Sun and Co Javier, and not to put the experience down there, they do have bunks, but it's because the rooms are smaller. That's the only way they're going to be able to fit that many people into the house, because it's an old town. Old Town has a lot to do there. There's a lot of things going on. So they have a smaller space than out here in the countryside, where they have a big space. And I feel like I get space in the quad room with my own bed than in a bunk bed. I mean, I learned not to become too picky. Like I've learned to do hostels. I am a bit with hostels as long as I'm in 6 or less. Yeah. Room of 6 people or less, I think it's okay. And I prefer more women, just for my peace of mind. Yeah. But overall, like, I don't have the money to, if I want to travel as much as I want to do, I don't have the luxury to always have like a nice hotel room to myself. So I know that, and I know that's a constraint. But overall, I think of like, the real value comes from the growth opportunities in the space. I think what's really refreshing to be in this environment is that everyone's very open. People are supportive of what you want, and people listen. And you just have a community full of inviting people that, want to grow. Like, all these people, they'll admit they're a work in progress. And they have that growth mindset of like, hey, I'm at this point here and, I want to build a business or I want to go the next level of my career, or I want to be a better communicator. Like everyone knows their strengths and weaknesses, and people respect that space to grow. Because I think I would say, not to say it's like separate, but the regular world, you don't always get that safe space to say, hey, I'm at this point and I don't know what to do and I need your help.
Mm-hmm.
The regular world would not always see that as a good thing. You might not have friends that are receptive to that, or you might not have a safe place to share that. And that's completely okay. But to be able to come here and be like, come as you are. You're a flawed person like anyone else. Everyone here is wanting to grow more as a person. I think it's a refreshing mindset to have, because not all places welcome that.
Yeah, totally agree. And like you say, you might not have that community or chance to talk about stuff like that in your daily life, because like not many people do. And also when you're here, you get like opinions and suggestions from people literally from all over the world. Like,
yes,
so many different backgrounds, perspectives, experiences that you just would not have if you had this similar issue at home and was trying to get advice there. Like, it's so different, and you can get so many different viewpoints and perspectives that can really sort of change the way you look at a certain subject or yourself or the people or the world. Like, and I think that's really
it's very
cool.
refreshing.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I think, and there's so much value to having people from all over the world. Like there's different cultural differences that everyone has, and different values and stuff. And it's to get like fresh perspective on things that you might not get in when you're home and you feel like you're in a more homogenous space where everyone kind of thinks the same, if you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you get different, ages and co-livings and stuff. Like, a lot of people assume it's just like young people, but you get people in like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even beyond.
Yeah.
Like, we had a couple in their 60s here last year, and like, so it's just like learning from people in just loads of different ways of life and different backgrounds and countries and stuff. And I think that's really, really cool. And like you say, everyone who comes to a co-living, I think, already has very similar values in terms of like wanting to grow, wanting to be very open and talk about things you wouldn't normally talk about with maybe like friends and family and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's cool. Okay. So where can people find and follow you online for your blog and your podcast and all that stuff?
You can go to my website, wineisseur.ca, and I'll leave that with you so you can put it in the description. I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have Pinterest. I have my Wineisseur podcast, which, to be fair, I've been kind of delaying a bit. Like, I think building a podcast was an opportunity to have more of a conversation about wine, which I love us having. I'm more comfortable with blogging and podcasting, and I'll admit that. But yeah, I hope that, to build more of a following through a podcast, I have 3 episodes, and I hope to publish a lot more. So I hope you follow me there. It's on Spotify.
Yeah, and I really like the episode you did with the other lady when you were like tasting wine together.
Barb.
Yeah,
she's great.
Really cool.
She's so amazing. She knows so much about the local industry, immense amounts compared to me, and she's so inviting about it. She's like, hey, like she has the same mindset as me. Like, hey, it's okay if you don't know.
Yeah.
Because let's just talk about it. Let's educate each other.
Nice. Okay, so before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Any message you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I just like to say, like, thanks for having me on your podcast again. I really appreciate being like a guest again. And I hope that, people leave this podcast just feeling like open to whatever's going on in their life and being able to chat about it with anyone. I hope I was vulnerable enough about wine and about living in a co-living. And I hope that people just come out of this like refreshed and excited to try new things and, open to new experiences, having that growth mindset.
Nice. Yes, and we'll have to do this again one time, maybe with some champagne. Okay, well, thank you for coming on. Let's cheers to that. Cheers. Thank you. And until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review, and spread the word if you have friends or family who also want to transform through travel. For a chance of winning one of my books in ebook form, please review this podcast on Apple Podcasts and send a screenshot or just your name to info@traveltransformationcoach.com or at traveltransformationcoach on Instagram. I'll be picking a new winner each month, and you can choose between any of my non-fiction titles, including Write Your Life, Write Your Year, and Intentional Travel Transformation. You can find out more about me at traveltransformationcoach.com, where you can also get your free travel transformation guide. And until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.